Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings-on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I am Adam Elliott, the goal conceded against the run of play of the podcast. Just like our cutback defending, I am also bad. And I'm joined today by the equalising header goal of the podcast, scored by a tall, brutish man. Just like this man, it's Martin Riley. You're almost as handsome as Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well, mate. Martin, how are you doing?
I would not agree with that. He's a very very handsome man, and my missus, who's who's a Man United fan, has commented on Calvert-Lewin. She's like, "Who's that?" I was like, "It's Dominic Calvert-Lewin." Oh, him. Did he used to play for someone else? Yeah, I said, yeah, Everton, and he played for England as well. Oh, I like him. He's all right. So yeah, but no, I am tall, but I'm not very brutish. I'm probably one of the softest men you'll meet in person. But yeah, I'm doing good. I've had a good, easy day today, and I've had a nice tea. I had chicken in breadcrumbs, in like a Cajun style breadcrumbs with some potato skins with cheese and jalapeno, and it was very good. I enjoyed it. Wasn't my best work, but it filled the hole. How about yourself, mate? How are you doing?
Good to hear. And yeah, really well. Last few weeks have been great. Some good stuff at work today, and made a Thai prawn curry for tea. Normally it's chicken, but went prawn this time. Very good. I still think I slightly prefer chicken, but it was still pretty good. And I'm also actively trying not to have pasta as much, given that not only is it a joke in the Discord, but it's seeping into other places. So I don't want everyone to think that's all I eat for, tea for pod days. So mixing it up, and that's been good. But yeah, I'm really well. I'm going to talk about Brentford today, and how Leeds played against them. So very easy. We were just saying before we came on, maybe the most straightforward review of the season. Please don't click off if you've heard that. You can continue listening or watching if you're on YouTube. A reminder for YouTube viewers, please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment, give us feedback. Always appreciated. All of that. And we're also on Spotify and all the other podcast players. Give us reviews there. Go see us on TikTok. Alfie will love that. He's been in charge of that stuff. He did one that went a little bit viral with the Leeds community earlier, ranking our loan and free agent signings all time. And obviously Alex Cairns came out on top. So
obviously, as he should.
Obviously. So go and look at all that if you haven't already. But yes, I'm well. Thank you for asking. Glad you are too. It's a busy period now though. So probably a good time to just quickly remind viewers things do change a bit over Christmas, because not only is it a busier schedule footballing wise, but it's also a busier schedule for people's lives with friends and family and all the rest of it. I'm sure there's still people listening with presents to buy and wrap. That's the same for the pod team. That's the same for the editing team. So there might be some, pods combined. There might be some things missed. Just a quick note, there's definitely not going to be a Liverpool preview pod, because we have literally just done one a couple of weeks ago and it's still relevant. And Dan and I, in my opinion, did a pretty good job. So there's no point, for example. And there'll be other sort of stuff like that that'll come up, which means that we might skip the odd thing. But hopefully it's okay, and by the new year, it will be back to normal, I promise. But I'm telling you now, because today and the Palace preview coming up will be fine, but after that, it will be a bit messy. Anyway, should we get into this?
Let's do it.
Right, we'll start as always with the game summary, which is that Leeds approached the game in their, can I say it, Martin, their usual 3-5-2 formation. Wow, it kind of is becoming that now, isn't it? And Brentford went with a 4-3-3 under Keith Andrews. For much of the first half, the Bees were the team with the most possession. Despite them having 66% possession, it was actually Leeds who created the better of the chances in the match in the first half, coming closest with some chances from Noah Okafor in particular, although Brentford did come close, having a soft penalty awarded, which was rightly overturned. The second half was quite different, with Leeds taking control of the game, looking the more dominant in all areas, having more chances and possession. But despite all of this, it was Brentford to notch the first goal, with Rico Henry putting a cross into the box, which was deflected to Jordan Henderson in 2025, who finished into corner past Lucas Perry in the 70th minute. Leeds then made some changes and switched to a 4-2-3-1. And they continue to look more likely to score. And this time, that is exactly what happened when, in the 82nd minute, substitute William Gnonto whipped in a cross, which big Dom, DCL, Calvert-Lewin, rose highest over the defence like a salmon to head past. I'm not going to try and say his first name because I always forget, and we have lots of Irish friends and listeners, and I don't want to get it wrong. So I'm just going to say Kelleher. I'm not even going to try and do it, to be honest. So if you want to do it, Martin, and offend people, go for it, but I'm not going to. And then Leeds continued to apply pressure for the remainder of the game. But the score, however, ended 1-1 in the end. In terms of the stats of note then, because there was a bit of a split between possession in both halves, quite a big split. In the end, Brentford had 57% of the ball. We had 43%. But we had 1.52 expected goals to their 0.72. And we had over double the shots they had. They had 7 to our 18, including 2 big chances for us and 1 for them. So, yeah, in that sense, it looks quite dominant, I have to say. And I guess we're going to talk about that now as the first question, which I sometimes do, and I've gone for it this time as well, which is that does the data actually reflect the match? And maybe we can split this into two halves, and we're going to at some point, so you can do so now as well if you want. But does the data reflect the match, Martin? In my head, there were some opportunities for them in particular with Ouattara, who I actually like, and I think he's a good player, but he certainly got into some dangerous areas and then really messed up. The next action just wasn't there at all. It was probably more in the first half that it was noticeable, but there were a couple of occasions in the second where they broke and they just weren't decisive at all, and they didn't get a shot off in those situations very often. So in that sense, they had some good threatening moments in dangerous areas, and maybe it doesn't reflect an 0.72. But then I remembered, as I was writing this question, that towards the end of the match, there were especially a couple of moments for us with Anton Stack getting the ball around the edge of the box in good positions and then not just quite being decisive enough, having a bit of a nosebleed and messing up the attack. So maybe it just cancels out and maybe the data is reflective. What are your thoughts?
It 100% is reflective, especially from the second half. The first half, neither team really did a whole lot. Both teams were doing a good job to stop high-value chances, but we still did come out on top in the first half. But in the second half, we were generally looking the more likely to score throughout the game, and their goal very much came against the run of play. There were those moments that you mentioned where Ouattara was able to get into some space, but I do think that Goodmanson handled that threat quite well, quite often. And in moments where Ouattara was able to get ahead of him, he usually was able to get back into a decent position to defend. And it wasn't very often that he was totally exposed in that role. And Ouattara is a very big threat, 1v1, and I think he did a really good job to point that a little bit out. But yeah, I think Brentford maybe could have made better of some moments, but it's also, like you say, the same for us. There was a few moments where crosses were put in and there's no one there to meet them. Sak put in a lovely cross at one point, and it just was not. There's no one there to hit it. He whips it in from the left channel, and it just all it needed was a touch from anyone, and it was going in the back of the net, or it would have caused a big save from Kelleher, which I don't know. I also don't want to pronounce his first name because I feel I would get it wrong. And in the running order for this, when I was trying to type his name, I typed it wrong, and the autocorrect actually selected Zhao Ming Kelleher. So he is now Zhao Ming Kelleher. I can pronounce that name fine. Isn't that weird? I can pronounce that name fine.
It's funny because we've both heard it said by a commentator, by the way, and pundits.
I forget. I think it's Kermin.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not trying it.
I think that's what I heard from the game.
You've offended someone. 100%.
Probably have. I apologize if I have offended any of our Irish listeners. But then we're back to the question. So there were definitely moments where both teams could have made more. For moments, I think those two, like you say, cancel each other out, really. And the overall XG map of us having double their XG definitely wears out for me, and that does feel accurate. And in my mind, I think if any team was going to win this game, it was going to be us. I think, if anything, this stresses how you have to be totally switched on for a full 90 minutes, because all it took was for us to switch off in that one moment when they scored, and they scored from it.
Pensioner Jordan Henderson, who's going to probably be in the England squad next summer as well, for goodness sake.
we will look into what we'll talk about the reason that goal in more detail. But yeah, that's all it takes. Against Premier League opposition is switching off one moment, allowing a little bit too much space for a player, no matter who that player is, and they can get some joy. A little bit of luck on there, because I think if Biol hadn't tried to intercept it, I think Perry had the shot covered because it deflected up off Biol's foot. But we'll get into that later. That's the details of that goal. But yeah, I do think that on the question that was posed there, that those chances did balance each other out for me, and we did a good job managing their wide threats for them not able to create more than what they did.
You know, last season we used the word control a lot on these pods. I always felt like even when they had dangerous moments, though, we were largely in control of the match, and like we were the more threatening team as well. So, and that's important with or without the ball. Whether you feel in control, whether you feel like you are the more dominant side in terms of creating chances, and we were in both halves, even if we didn't have as much of the ball in the first as we did the second. So I was pretty happy with all that. What I will say, and we're going to talk about this now on this next question, we're going to break the game down a bit further between the halves. We had a question from Gunter Netzer fanboy, who's asked a few on Blue Sky recently, so thank you very much, who said, I liked our first half performance. The second half, we allowed the game to open up, but what changed, Martin?
So yeah, I looked into this specifically because it was clear from the live watch that something had changed between the first and the second half. And I think the biggest change, like, is usually the factor when anything changes rapidly, is one team has changed something in their approach, and it was ourselves. We went more aggressive in our out of possession structure, and Brentford weren't able to get a foothold in possession, especially in terms of kicks from Kelleher. In the first half, he only kicked 5 balls beyond the halfway line, and in the second half that bumped up to 8. So he's clearly going long more often because we were putting more pressure on goal kicks, and you saw quite frequently that they were setting up to play out. They had the 2 men inside the box around him, but we had 2 men on the edge of the box, and other players weren't ready to jump onto the wide areas, so they didn't risk it and went long. And you know what's going to happen when a team goes long against us? We eat that up all day long. When we've got Biol, we've got Strauch, we've got Roden in there. All 3 of them are able to challenge aerially. Then in midfield, we've got players who can also do it, like Anton Sak. So you've got lots of cover there for aerial battles. And another thing which shows how we were more aggressive in the first half, we had 12 defensive actions in the opposition half. And in the second half, we had 20. So that's a massive increase, nearly double the amount of opposition defensive half actions. So yeah, it was clear that the way that we were able to get more foothold in this game was being more aggressive. We were counter pressing more frequently, and generally weren't in the, I think, passive mid block that we were in the first half. But both halves showed ways in which we were controlling the game. In the first half, we controlled it by not allowing Brentford space and generally just stopping them from progressing into areas we're going to really, really damage us. And in the second half, we controlled it more by pressing aggressively and keeping more of the ball for ourselves. So it was a really nice parallel to both halves when you watch it back, just the way that we were able to control things. And it was a really, really delightful performance, to be honest. I think we looked more committed of the 2 teams. We were there to the second balls more often than not, especially in the second half when we were more aggressive in that. And yeah, it was night and day with the approach in the first and second half, but both halves were still good. It shows that we can be fluid in the way we're approaching things out of possession. And I think that is something which Daniel Farke has historically been good at, is making switches in his out of possession shape. We've made a few changes to individual opponents in the Championship, but it's more been the in possession structure which we've had trouble with him being adaptable, which is now showing signs of being able to change. So that is a good thing, but we'll get into more of the in possession stuff later.
Yeah, one thing, one of the reasons why we do watch the games back and we don't record immediately after, or we don't watch back and we just record the next day or whatever, one of the reasons we watch back is to try and notice stuff that we might have missed. Now, I think I've said this on this pod before, but I'm someone who watches when I'm watching, and I can't really watch tactically that much. Like, I might pick up on a few things, but for the most part, I'm watching as a fan. And that's why we rewatch, because I'm watching it tactically. But there are some Leeds fans, and I take my hat off to them, who can watch both as fans and as tacticians. And two good friends of the pod picked up on the same thing, and it's kind of what you were saying. John being one and Ethan being the other. John said, Brentford are doing a lovely job of moving into the spaces left behind Leeds players when they jump up. And then Ethan said, it's a game where defending with two wide would help a lot. With Stack jumping into Coyote and Tanaka Tahiki, it's too easy for their wide players to progress. And like, that's exactly what you were basically saying. The game was just a bit more open. And that's why it looked a bit more ragged and a bit more basketball-y. And you notice it, like you say, on rewatch. So great stuff. We then had a question from our lovely editor, Paul, who asked, I heard Brentford were meant to be good at home. Did they have an off day or did we make them look pretty meh? Wonder what you thought about that, Martin. As we've already kind of said, it was a bit of a dull game, especially for the neutral, and pretty straightforward one to unpick. So what are you saying to that one?
I just think on the day we were better. I think that is one thing I would say, that we did them look sharper and were able to get the ball, especially in the second half. Although I do say I was kind of expecting a different approach from Brentford. I think they were seeming to set up to want to possess the ball more than what I was expecting them to do. That they've always looked more dangerous to me when they are attacking in transition, and that's not something which I really saw play out. That could have been dictated by the way we approached the first half, because we were sitting off in that first half, so that could have been the way it dictated it, and the switch could have been pre-planned. Farker could have been thinking that we'll go passive in the first half, save energy for the second half, and then try to win it there. If that is the case, I've not actually listened to his post-match comments, so if that is the case, if anyone comment, if noticed that he said anything like that, then that'd be great. But that's just a theory I've got there. But I do think that Brentford are probably a little better than this, but it's still a bit up in the air, because I don't think Keith Andrews has really tried anything new with this lot yet. He's generally been sticking to what Brentford are known for and what they've been trained to do for a number of years under Thomas Frank. So it's just been keeping the ship sailing in the same direction. So I'm wondering if these more trying to possess the ball a little bit more, is Keith trying to imprint his own ideas a little bit more on them, and if that is the case, it might not be the best approach.
Because he hates Leeds so much that he got really arrogant. That's another theory, because we know what he was like in those punditry days over at Sky. So
it's true.
You're listening, Keith. I really don't like you, and I don't think many Leeds fans do, although I doubt you're listening. And just to kind of go in on Keith Andrews a little bit more, Steph agreed with me, our lovely other editor, Steph, one of the ones on the team, agreed with what I said basically on the preview after the game. He said, I think they're just vibing through with Keith Andrews from the Thomas Frank days, essentially, and I can't say I disagree. I think that is the case. And maybe if he is going to imprint more kind of possession-based ideas, if that's his plan longer term, then might be a bit of a concern for them. Might be good for us long term over the course of this season. Let's see. We're only 4 points behind still, it's as you were before the match, which I actually am pretty pleased about. But to go back to the question, I agree with a lot of what you said about how we managed the game, but it was other things as well. It's like they did have a lot of set pieces and long throws. That's a set piece in our heads like that. I don't actually know if it classes as one. I assume it does. It probably does.
It does. It does.
Yeah. It's not just free kicks and corners. Any ball that's kind of dead ball. And so they were pretty, much bombarding us with them for a lot of the first half in particular, it felt. But we just dealt with it so well. We had Stroud, Biol and Rodham were immense in that first half. We'll talk about them a bit later, but they were just so easily getting the ball out over and over again. Obviously, the best Brentford moment actually came from a Stroud mistake where he passed to, I can't remember which player it was now, it might have been Henderson, and he played it to Lewis Potter, and he had that shot. That was it. Otherwise, Stroud was brilliant, Rodham was brilliant, Biel was brilliant, and that was great. And then, like you say, because we were a bit kind of deeper, less possession, maybe as well, we had Steck and Ampadu around the edge of the box mopping up, and I mean, yeah, they were better in the second half, both of them, in terms of winning 50-50s, but that's because they were winning them higher up. Here, they were winning them still. They were just winning them around our box a little bit more, and it meant Brentford couldn't really do much. So we really, really restricted them in that sense, and I was very, very pleased with that. And we still had a threat on the break, didn't we? So, yeah, I think we managed the game pretty well here, even though the two halves were slightly different, as we said. Like I said it before, I'll just reiterate, I think we had the better control between the two boxes. I think we've already answered if so, why, and how, which I've got on the running order, so I'm not going to ask that. But I do want to ask about away form then, because Paul's asking how it was that Brentford weren't as good. You know, they went into this game, I think, third or fourth for home form in the league. They'd won all but one game, which they'd lost once. Was that Man City? It might have been. Can't remember now, to be fair. But they'd only lost one and they won the rest. That's for sure. So we're only the second team to take points off them. And it's our first draw of the season away from home as well. And only the second time overall that we've managed any points on our travels too after that Wolves win. It's also, if people didn't know, the first Premier League point we have picked up in London since that win to keep us up under Jesse Marsh, also away to Brentford. However, there are 11 league games away from home to go. And I've had a look at them and they're not all that nice on paper. It's very safe to say that our second half of the season running the games, they're falling nicer at home, which I prefer. I'm going to say that. Like, I do prefer that. I think we've got a nicer home game kind of run, but it means probably going to lose quite a lot of away games, Martin, for the second half of the season. Obviously, there are, got some kind of calls for optimism with Man City and how we played in that game, and maybe some of the big boys will go to, and it might actually suit us a bit more. Of course, there is that, and we probably will pick up some points from those games. Of course, we will. But I just wondered what your thoughts were on, because there was a bit of discussion about this in the Discord, especially me and Jamie were talking about it, about what kind of realistically we need to aim for points-wise away from home on our travels to survive. Have a stab at like a points per game or even just a rough points total you want to see us get away from home from now to the rest of the season, because we've got 4. What are you thinking? Don't look at the other stuff that I've put in that.
No, I'm not. So so on the points per game thing, I'm not really sure what number to say on that, but of the 11 games we've got left, I'd probably be looking at, let's see, probably be hoping for a couple of wins there and maybe a couple of draws. And that's probably what I would extend it to, maybe about 7-8 points from those 11 games. So what's that, about 0.6, 0.7, roughly, points per game away from home. So then to balance that off, you need like 1.5 at home, and then that gets you to 1 point per game. So I think home form is always going to be where our bread is buttered, and I haven't looked at the numbers. I haven't looked at what you put there. I was good. I didn't look, and I do feel that it is more likely to be the home form that keeps teams up than away form, personally, because it's just going to be what it is. Yeah.
Right. Well, so just because I was curious about this, I had a little delve into it to see if there was actually anything in terms of statistics that would shake out that would make us feel better or worse about the situation. I'll spoil it now and just feeling neutral. But anyway, I'll read it out to listeners because they might be intrigued. I had a look at 15th to 17th place teams, which is probably our realistic aim for this season for the last 4 years. I didn't look further back than that, especially because the year before that was the COVID year, so there were no crowds and I didn't want to use that data. I've just used the last 4 seasons before now. And last season, Spurs finished 17th and they won 17 points from 19 games. Man United 18 and Wolves 21. Year before was Forest 16, Brentford 17, Everton 20, which was the 12th best away record. The year before was the one we got relegated. We had 9. Everton got 15. Forest had just 8. They were the worst in the league and they survived. Bournemouth got 17 in 15th. The season before, we actually finished 17th, but with 20 out of 38 of our points away. Everton 16th with just 10 points away, and then Southampton in the middle with 15 in 15th. So what can we ascertain from that? Basically, you can say that it doesn't matter because there are some teams finishing 15th with 8 or 9. There are some teams finishing in the relegation zone with about 15 away from home. There are other teams surviving in 17th with 20 points away from home, which is a lot. They just didn't get that many at home. So it's really weird, really unpredictable, and it doesn't matter all that much. I think we all know as fans that Ellen Road has got to be at least somewhat of a fortress. We've got Arsenal, Man City to come still, but other than that, our other home games look pretty decent on paper in the remaining 11. So I kind of broadly agree with you. I think if we just we've got 4 now. I think if we get to around the kind of 11, 12 mark, It's probably all right because I think our home form will be good enough. Hopefully, that'll be enough. If we get anything above 12 and we continue as we are at home in terms of picking up points, we'll definitely survive. So yeah, just an interesting one. Just did a bit of digging into it. It's just very, very weird. The Premier League is weird. Even the fact that Everton have had a season where they were better away from home than at home, like that just doesn't sit right in my head. Goodison being that classic, oh, it's a fortress. Yeah, none of it makes any sense. The final thing I wanted to ask then, Martin, is because we had a question from Josie about Bournemouth. This was actually before they drew 4-4 with Man United in a mad game. Who said they've had the third worst form in the league and some very stinky fixtures coming up. They couldn't, could they? Is what she asked about relegation. And she also asked us, because we always loved them, asked what's going wrong there. Now, I can't give you a deep dive into what's going wrong or right at Bournemouth. I'll leave that to John to maybe cover on TIFO at some point, considering he is a sort of Bournemouth fan in some ways. But, like, looking at the table right now, it's a funny one, Martin. Like, we were talking about West Ham in the group chat today, and they look like they're going to be okay. But watching Brentford back on that rewatch, I would worry for them. I would worry for them, and I don't know how you felt about the situation right now as it is.
So yeah, so just looking at the table we've got there, the teams who are around us. West Ham could be all right. Nuno may have made them a bit more solid. I watched the game against was it Villa they played at the weekend. I watched like the second half of that, and they were probably a bit unlucky in that game to not get points out of it. Just Morgan Rogers doing Morgan Rogers things. But yeah, so but West Ham are obviously in amongst it with us because they're currently in a relegation spot and 3 points behind us. But things can change for clubs when they start stopping goals being conceded and whatnot. Forest, they're also looking likely to be stabilising under Dyche. Again, if he can stop the goals and keep them scoring. I know John's mentioned that they've been doing some interesting things recently as well. I know John is a bit of a Dyche fanboy, I think. But yeah, then I think Brentford probably will get drawn into this. I'm also not convinced that Keith Andrews is the guy. And I wasn't when his name was appointed. I was like, really? Okay. But yeah, it depends how much he strays from the Thomas Frank model and whether if that also stops working, whether he has any answers to change them up in a positive way so they can stop from falling down the table because they are pretty close to us now, 4 points behind us. That can very quickly get eaten up. And then Fulham are on the same amount of points. So yeah, they can also be dragged in. They've also been pretty stinky at times in games, and Bournemouth aren't too far away. But I do think that Bournemouth's squad should probably help them sort it out. And I think before long they will start picking up points again. So I wouldn't say Bournemouth are there, but Fulham and Brentford, I think definitely could get drawn into it for sure.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to talk about it is because you just need to keep as many teams with you as possible, and the reason why that was relevant is because we just drew with Brentford. We didn't lose to them, and if we'd lost to them, it would have been not disastrous for us, but it certainly wouldn't have been good at all whatsoever. But just keep as many teams in touching distance as possible. Obviously, the screenshot I've put in front of you has the whole of the bottom half. Do I think Spurs and Newcastle will somehow go down? No, I don't. I know they're a bit of a mess, both teams, for different reasons and different ways, but I just don't see that. I kind of have Bournemouth in the same bracket. So for me, it's Fulham downwards. And I'm almost, and this is going to sound really arrogant, and I hope that no Wolves or Burnley fans are listening, I'm almost drawing a line under West Ham's name because I just don't think Burnley and Wolves will survive. Burnley are 11th for expected points, which is the worst in the league by a distance because the next worst is Wolves on 16 points. Sure, Wolves are going behind a lot in games and there's a bit of game state doing some lifting there for them. For sure, that has to be the case. But at the same time, I think those two are the worst two teams in the league by quite a large margin. And West Ham have some quality and have a good manager. Forest have a lot of quality and a decent manager, and I think they will improve probably the most of any of these teams. I actually think Forest are the most likely to be okay out of this batch. I think Fulham, Brentford, Leeds, and West Ham, I would be surprised if the final spot is not one of those four teams, personally. Hopefully it's not us, but that's where I'm at, and I don't know where other fans are at, but looking at both the table and expected points, and then just watching these teams with your eyes, seeing who's improving slightly, which I think West Ham are. Like, they're definitely getting a bit more solid, a little bit more organised, and that will only serve them well going forward. They've also got January around the corner where they can get themselves a couple of profiles they're really desperate for, like a number 9 that's fit and can hold the ball, centre mid that can do a bit more running for them, and all that kind of thing. But we've got a January window for us as well, and yeah, hopefully we'll do some stuff and keep ourselves within touching distance going into kind of January the 2nd, because we've got Liverpool on January the 1st and beyond, because if we can, we've got a real chance. Cool. We will talk a bit more about the Brentford game. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss, Martin, about anything there? Anything from the game? Or can I move on to the
All
second?
good. All good.
Lovely stuff. Right, we'll move on.
Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Right, we're going to discuss players' performances, other bits and pieces in a bit more detail, and then some more of your questions. So let's break down the goal. We always start this section now with this. This is not our goal, it's the Brentford goal, Martin. Our goal, obviously, one of the best things you've ever seen. It should be hanging it in the Louvre and all that, even though you can't hang videos in the Louvre. Maybe just a still of Calvert-Lewin heading it in, or just a still of Calvert-Lewin because he's gorgeous. But anyway, I digress. So Brentford's goal. What are we saying then, and as to where the blame goes? Because it did look like it might have been hitting the post / Perry might have had it covered. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few things going on with this. Obviously, firstly, you've got to look in Bergel's direction, because obviously there's a player who got beyond him, and there's a lot of space for him to get into there. However, what you've got to remember here is that Bergel was initially covering what was their left-sided winger's name again? I forget it.
Keane Lewis Potter.
That's it, Keane Lewis Potter. So he was covering Potter, and Potter had sort of started to drift a bit deeper, and Rico Henry made a run beyond. So there was no one else who could cover that run at that moment, because he'd dropped deep. So he pushed further forward to keep track of Potter, and then that left space behind him for Henry to get into. So that's that. But Roden was there on the cover, so there was still someone there to try to stop that cross, and he did a decent enough job there, but wasn't able to stop it. But then the issue was, I don't think Stack did a great job watching the run of Henderson. I mean, I know it's Henderson and he's ancient, only a few years younger than me, so he must be ancient if he's only a few years younger than me in footballing terms. And he didn't track the run. He was just behind him at one point, but then he just sort of decelerated and just let Henderson go deeper into the box, into a bunch of space, and should have been closer to him on that run. So I think that's probably the biggest blame I'd put on one individual player. But it's just, like I say, it's just one of those moments you switch off for a moment in the Premier League, and no matter what the player is, they can take advantage and score from it. And that's all this was, just a momentary lapse, and a goal was conceded. And those things can happen in the Premier League. The same thing happened with us for scoring. Brentford's player totally forgot to jump. I mean, I don't think he would have actually won the ball if he had jumped, because Calvert-Lewin jumped about 10 feet in the air. But yeah, it's just one of those things which can happen so easily in the Premier League, and with a bit of luck our way. But Bijol does not get a touch to it. Perry's foot is positioned well to get it, because he put his foot out to get it, and I've looked at this a few times, and I do think that Perry would have just covered that shot. It was going quite low, and then the deflection from Bijol just raised it up a bit, and he wasn't able to get to it then. So yeah, just one of those frustrating things to happen. But I do think that Stack could have done a little bit better on covering Henderson's run.
I'm going to add one thing, which is I also think that Roden's a little slow to react when the danger starts to become obvious. I don't think it's just Stack that switches off. I think he's just like...
I'd agree, yeah.
He's just not quite at it, and that's a shame, because He had a good game. Quite all of the centre backs really played really well here, to be honest, outside of a couple of moments. And this was one of Rodon's moments after Strauch had one in the first half.
But the question is how can we blame the left side for this cutback being scored from the from the right channel? How can we blame the left side? Is it Goodmanson? Is it Okafor not tracking back? No. So, this is what I mean. That was I may sound a bit facetious with this. How we're mentioning that just because an attack comes from one side doesn't mean that it's that side's at fault for the goal being conceded. Like it could be, like we say, Rodon. It could be not timing his run correctly, not spotting Henry making that run, or Stack not tracking the run into the box. These are more central players, and it's just where the assists originated from. It's not always the case, but yeah, I digress.
We'll leave it there. I won't be answering any more questions, Your Honour. We had a question from Tom Wilson from Focus on Leeds, our good friend, who asked, I thought we had good success picking up the second balls and isolating Okafor with Nathan Collins at times from going long. However, did we start to see a bit too much of the slow, safe football we've become accustomed to under Farke? I'll quickly go first on this, which is to say that, well, you've updated on this doc I've got in front of me. Every single time now, percentage of passes long in each match, kind of our directness in the game. And yeah, this one was just above average. But it did feel to me that this was kind of a bit more mixed, and probably explained by what you said about the first and second half splits. There were certainly some phases of the game where we were definitely playing it a bit much shorter and we were trying to progress the ball. Stack was quite a deep position, I found sometimes. Other times when it was definitely more, let's go for the second balls, and Stack was pinching in ahead of other midfielders for them and winning it in nice areas, and I really liked that. So it was probably for me one of the most obvious. Like there was certainly a mix at different points in the game. What do you think about Tom's question, Martin?
I do agree with what he's saying, that we did mix things up and we did play more slower at times, but this was exactly what I wanted to happen in the preview to this game. I said that I wanted us to mix things up. I wanted to sometimes go for a more consolidated possession style and also go long at times. I think that's exactly what we did. There were some moments where I was thinking, maybe we could be a bit more direct in this, and but then like 10 seconds later, we did go more direct. So we were trying to mix things up, and if you watch it back on the rewatch, we were doing quite a bit of long stuff mixed in with the short. It's just it's easy to assume that that's what's happened sometimes with Farke, but I don't think that was the case on this particular game. I think we did mix things up to a good enough degree where it wasn't bad. Like you said, I've updated the passing stats. 17.48 of the time we went long. So the highest we've gone long this season was against Chelsea, 24%, then Bournemouth, 22%, then Newcastle, 18%. But yeah, the most of the other games where it happened is a lot. We've had games where it's been a lot lower. Let's just say that. Just the Burnley one, 9.5%. Oh, what? If I removed that from there, our season average would be so much higher. But yeah, it's just such an outlier. Is that game? It's just what were we doing? I don't know. But yeah, I do think that what Tom is saying is right, that we did go more slow and patient, but I don't always think that's a bad thing, because we do need to keep the opponent guessing. If we just go long to Calvert-Lewin every single time or go more direct, try to get in behind to Okafor, then we'll also get too predictable. And I don't want us to be predictable, because that's what was seen before with Farke. When we were going slow, teams knew what we were going to do before we even got on the pitch. And if we can mix it up like this, it does mean that it's more difficult for opposition teams to say how it is that we're going to create chances. Sometimes they create through settled play, sometimes they create from direct play. So yeah, so how can the opponent prepare for that is what I'm saying. It's more difficult to prepare for. If they know that they're going to be expecting more direct stuff from us, then they'll practice that in training before the matches, and they'll look to address those deficiencies if they have them in their squad. Or if we're going to be more slow, they'll be trying to work on the press to try to nail that down. So it's not a problem for me, the way we mix things up in this, and it was a good balance for me.
Yeah, and I know he scored, but Calvert-Lewin didn't have as much success aerially, or it felt like it. I haven't looked at the stats in terms of what he was winning, but he then won the one that mattered, didn't he? So it didn't really matter in the end. Yeah, I can see why it was a mix as well, because like we said about the space that Brentford had out wide at times, getting beyond our wing backs. If we won the ball back and they then counter press quite aggressively on us, it made sense why we might have gone long in those situations. We didn't just we just didn't want the ball. You either go long yourself or you go straight back to Perry and you get him to boot it, which we did, and that was fine. Tom actually said maybe it was a game lacking quality, so that's why I felt like this. And it'd be interesting to hear what you thought on the rewatch. We think that it was probably more of a planned thing, a mixed style, and that's why it was the case. Kevin Flannery also had a similar question on Twitter, so thank you for that one. We hope we answered it there. We then had a question a little bit more about Okafor here from Ali Lister on Twitter, who said, any thoughts on how Okafor approaches the 1v1s technique-wise? Martin, what did you make of this one?
So I love the way Okafor approached his 1v1 dribbling, because it reminds me of Georgie. They've both got a very similar style in the way they will look to front up to duels in dribbling. They'll use their body and strength and power, but also really good close control and bursts of pace to get beyond players. And they've both got similar attributes in that. That's why I'm glad we brought in a player like Okafor. It brings in a bit of what we're missing from Georgie in that. And he was great in this one at committing to his man and bursting beyond into space at times. And it was just a really positive performance from Okafor. He could have, on another day, he could have scored in this one. I felt he did really well. And just had to touch quickly on what you said about the aerial duels there. I did look it up. In this game, he actually won the joint most that he's had in this season so far. 6 aerial duels won. The other game where he won that many was against Chelsea. However, he did lose 12. So he did challenge for a lot of aerials in this.
Like that. Yeah.
So I think this is the most aerials that he challenged for in a game, if I'm reading this correct.
Right.
Helpfully, FBref doesn't tell you the total amount of duels, so you have to do a little manual calculation. It just tells you won and lost. I mean, you can work it out from that, but
it's probably
you could
quite
just
low numbers. But
you could just put a total there.
You get one of your younger kids probably could work that one out. I think.
Yeah, well, I think it is the highest that he's challenged for in a game. 18 aerial duels he went up for in this one and won 6 of them, so around 33%.
So I was right. My vibes were right. Cool.
Yeah, but it's not always the case, like you say, of winning the area isn't always the thing, because I think one of the chances which Okafor had came from a missed aerial duel. Calvert-Lewin didn't get to the goal. It was headed forward, and it was passed on to Okafor from there. I think it was actually a Brentford player who touched it into his path, and then he sort of ran onto it, if you remember the one that I mean. So I burst past Collins and got a shot off from it. So I do. But going back to the question, I do really like the way he approaches his direct dribbling, and he's just an asset. There's no one else who does it like him in the squad. So he's one of the reasons why I think he does need to play a lot of football, because he does unsettle opponents when he does go on those direct runs.
I had a couple of things to say about Okafor, and actually someone else as well, just because really weirdly, like before Ali had even asked this question on Twitter, I'd actually made a note to make a point about another player in the team's dribbling style. And then I saw this question from Ali and I was like, that's crazy, because it's a different player, but like you've asked a question on 1v1 dribbling, which I was going to bring to the table with someone else. Anyway, Okafor then, I think like 2 things. First of all, one of the ones that he has in his locker is the fact he's just rapid. And so sometimes it doesn't even have to like approach a player 1v1 and do all that much to beat them, because he knows he can trust himself. If he has the space to work, that he's going to burst past them. He doesn't have to do like a step over or a trick. Like it can just be, I stand you up, I'm just going to go this way or that way, and whichever way I choose, you're not going to be able to catch me because I'm too quick. Quite often when he does that one, he goes down the left, because I think the players often expecting him to go onto his right foot to shoot. I can't speak today. Don't know what's wrong with me. I think they expect him to shoot on his right foot, but he often goes down the left instead. And obviously one of the best chances in the entire match was when he went down the left and put the ball across. it didn't quite work out, but it was a really dangerous moment, and I like when he does that. The other one that he does that I've noticed is he likes to do this. He'll do a ball roll and then a step over, and then he'll choose which way he's going. It's not the most like fancy, most sexy, flary type of dribble you've ever seen. Like, piece of skill isn't that exciting, but he does it and it works. And I decided, because I've noticed this season with Leeds, I watched a compilation off the back of Ali's question as well, some of his dribbling. And again, this is the one thing that comes up the most. He's actually not like incredibly skillful in the sense that he does loads of different tricks. He has like 2 or 3 in his locker that he goes to, and it works for him. And that's fine. And that's great. You don't need to be doing all this stuff that Neymar used to do and Ronaldinho used to do. Like, you don't have to do all that. But the other player I wanted to mention here was, and kind of similar but in a different way, is like Goodmanson. So the left side, which is 2 of obviously our best players for carrying the ball, dribbling the ball, progressing the ball, because they can run up the pitch. They've got the athleticism to do so. Goodmanson, and I really picked on this in the game, I think it's partly what caused him maybe some problems in the last game when he gave away the ball for Liverpool's goal. He shows a heck of a lot of the ball to the opponent and then quickly takes it away from them. He just snaps it away from them, and then he trusts, because he can take a bit of a bigger touch there, he trusts his kind of speed, his athleticism off the mark to get there, and most of the time it works. And here I saw so many examples of it, and it was just like, oh yeah, you show loads of it you almost draw them in by showing them loads of the ball, and then you go, nope, I'm going to take that away from you. And I can relate, because when I was a kid, I was a winger or striker. I was a bit of a dribbler, but I wasn't actually that skillful. I used to just rely on my pace, and one of my mates used to hate it because he would be like, you barely ever beat me for a trick. You nearly always just, we used to call it, because we were kids, pace abuse. And I was like, yeah, but I'm faster than you, so I can. It's like, yeah, fair enough. And it does work in games, but I think Goodmanson does the same thing I did. He definitely just like trusts that he can beat the opponent, whoever it is, in that 1-versus-1 sprint over 5, 10, 15 yards. And it works for him. So yeah, really interesting one. Thanks for the question, Ali. Got me thinking about our left side dribblers and how important they are to this team. And yeah, they both are, and they both do slightly similar thing, slightly different thing, but it's cool. But on forwards then, Martin, I want to talk about subs now, because we had quite a few questions about subs. We saw in 2 games in a row now that the impact of substitutes. We saw Tanaka get an equaliser against Liverpool, and then we saw in this game, Gnonto got an assist for Dominic Calvert-Lewin for the equaliser in the Brentford game. So we had a question from Concords, or the Hippopotamus, on Twitter. He said, Farke's actually learned to make subs that change the game. Is that a depth thing, or is that the system maybe? And then Wiggy, also on similar lines, who asked a lot of questions again, so thank you, Wiggy. So we didn't lose in London. I hope Farke now has accepted that Brendan Aronson has found his true vocation. I think what he's trying to say is he should be a sub. He's better to come off the bench, and he even said that he must annoy the opposition more than he annoys us when he comes on with 25 minutes to go, because he's a busy bee, because he runs around, because he does a lot of pressing. So he got the subs right again. Aronson did all right. Gnonto did really well. What did you make of that? What did you make of the question, the first one?
So yeah, I do definitely agree that the subs have been good, but once again, it's what else could he have done in those situations? And the fact that the sub was made after we'd conceded. I know we was on top in the game, and it wasn't too much of an issue, but there wasn't too much else that he could have done. It's not like he's done anything mystical. I agree he's done the right thing, but it's the sort of right thing which we all would have done. It's not anything breathtaking. They've worked on these occasions. And yeah, it's just one of those things which can happen sometimes here, that I feel like I'm being really harsh here, but it is just the sort of thing which I would have done myself if we just conceded. Then yeah, when he gets more attacking players on, let's do this, let's do that. And on the bench, the players that we had, who else were you going to bring on than Gnonto and Aronson? Those were the 2 who you'd want to bring on, because our depth at the moment, like Hippopotamus said, is pretty low, and we've got none of Nature on the bench to use. So the main attackers that we can use is the ones that he has brought on. But he's still bringing them on, so you've got to give him credit for that. but sometimes they would still like to be a little bit sooner than what they were. Maybe would have liked to have Gnonto on about 10 minutes sooner than what he was, because we were having a lot of good territory, but we were struggling with the final ball, and Gnonto is our most passy attacker in the team. He's the one who I trust most, finds a difficult pass, and he wants the ball to feet. He always wants to have the ball at all times. He's a ball to feet winger rather than one who will run onto it. So it dovetails quite nicely with what Okafor gives, which he more likes to. Sometimes he'll take the ball to feet, but he can also run onto it as well because he's got the pace to do it. I don't think Gnonto has that sort of pace in his locker. He's not slow by any means, but he doesn't have that acceleration that Okafor has over short distances, in my opinion. He's got more of a long distance pace to his game, I think. But yeah, I do think that you need to give some credit, but let's not go overboard. It's just the sort of thing that we've been asking him to do for a long time, which he is now doing.
Yeah, they probably are the right subs, you're right. But we did have other attackers on the bench. He didn't have to go with those, and he ended up going with Aronson and Gnonto. But he could have gone with Peru. He could have gone with Harrison. Obviously, did go with Harrison later. So in that sense, want to defend him a little bit and say, well, you know, he could have done a front two with Peru as the kind of 10 just behind Calvert-Lewin, perhaps, instead of Aronson. But no, he wanted Aronson's, I guess, intensity, and that was the right choice. So yeah, I mean, the main one was Gnonto. I'm not going to add loads to what you said. I want to get towards the last questions here. And there was a lot of talk about Gnonto in the Discord after this one, because he's played that cross 3 times for Leeds in his career at Leeds that are memorable. The first one was against Norwich 2 seasons ago now in the playoff semi-final for Joel Peru heading home in the 4-0 win. The second one wasn't that long after, when we played Sunderland around this time last year, and he played the cross in for Peru to head in. I think 2 of Peru's only headers for Leeds. He might have only got 1 or 2 more. And he headed in against Sunderland in the first half of that 2-2 draw, where we went 1-0 up and then Melied. And then he played it here against Calvert-Lewin. So fantastic. Definitely our best sub. Definitely could have been earlier. Quite a few people noted that. But Jamie in the Discord asked what we think to the prospect of fitting him into the squad, playing perhaps, if we're going to continue with a 3-5-2, in a false 9 role alongside Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I'll add one more thing to that, which is maybe we do a 3-4-3 at some point and we sacrifice a midfielder. Maybe it's a front 3 with Gnonto and Okafor either side of Calvert-Lewin while Mitch is out. Maybe that makes some sense. But answer Jamie's question first.
So yeah, we've discussed this in our group chat not that long ago, to be honest. I think it was me who asked the question, and yeah, I do think that it could work, and I would like to see it. And the 3-4-3 is also another option that we can fit Gnonto into the squad, but I think against a lot of teams that would sacrifice too much stability. If you're going a 3-4-3, that means you only have 2 midfielders, and when you've already got less numbers to help in
Fewer.
wide areas, yeah, fewer. When you've already got fewer numbers to help in wide areas, like was mentioned earlier, we want to try to get support to Jadon Bogle via the wide central midfielders. So Tanaka and Stack in this case can produce the inside one. If you took one of those midfielders out, that would leave a lot less cover in the midfield areas and deeper. Yes.
Sorry, I'll stop.
It's okay. I like the bit, don't worry. So I do think that it's a delicate balancing act, and maybe at the moment the 3-5-2 is what we should stick to, because it gives you that balance to have players who can help out in wide areas, which I do think that they have been doing. Sometimes they can maybe do it a little bit more, but they have been still helping out in those wide spaces. And I think for now, you either play Okafor or Gnonto with Calvert-Lewin, but maybe not both of them. Off the bench, yeah, you could do that for sure. Maybe the move could be rather than going with the back four like Farke's been switching to, we switched to a 3-4-3 just to get that extra body and attacking areas while still keeping the defensive solidity that the back three offers us. Yeah, we'd lose a little bit in the midfield areas, but we wouldn't lose totally. We've still got that back three to help in the box to defend. So there is a number of ways I do want to see Gnonto more, and if that does mean Okafor not playing in a game, I'm okay with that, because he can. I think he could dovetail quite nicely. Perfect big man, little man combo there. I don't think there can be a littler man than Gnonto who can fit in that situation.
Wow.
Yeah, I think with the way that Gnonto wants the ball to his feet often, that could work quite well alongside Calvert-Lewin. He can also combine with lots of players that way as well. He's got a good relationship with a lot of our players. He's played well on the right side with Bogle, so he can combine there. I think he could work quite well with Goodmanson on the left, although they haven't really done too much. But when he has come on recently, when he has been effective over on the left side, that's where he won the penalty. Going over the left, so it gives you a lot of things, especially in these moments where you're changing mid game. But I'd also quite like to see it from the start of the game, just to see what he can offer, because Gnonto's earned a start for a while now, and he's looking like he's back to his full fitness now after some tough injuries this season. So yeah, I just want to see more of Gnonto, and yeah. He's a really fun player when he's at his best and can be really effective at this level, in my opinion.
In case people didn't know, both Okafor and Gnonto, although Okafor has since said he doesn't love playing the role, they both played in front twos in their respective leagues before they joined Leeds. So Okafor did a bit in Italy, but mostly in Austria when he played for Salzburg. Was regularly the left-sided striker in a front two. Gnonto similarly at Zurich before he joined Leeds after he left Inter Milan. He was playing as a front two quite often there as well. I think they used him in a few different roles, but he definitely was part of a front two as a striker or as kind of a second striker, false nine, whatever you want to call it. I don't really love the false nine phrase, actually. I think it's better to say second striker in this instance than false nine. But yeah, he definitely can do that, in my opinion. So I'm for it, but I'm also for, like what you said, maybe in some games where you don't want quite as much balance, you want to just go for it a bit more. You can play a front three, Gnonto could play on the right, Okafor on the left, gets you a bit more threat, gives you some good combinations, potentially wing back to winger. We know what Bogle and Gnonto are like down the right, and we know what Goodmanson and Okafor have been like down the left. So that could still also be fine. In that instance, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I genuinely mean this. The trio that was absolute killer at in the championship last season, I really can't speak today, was Tanaka, Bogle and Gnonto, and so I would play those three on one side. On the left, we've had the combination of Goodmanson, Stach and Okafor for a while now, so it would actually be Ampadu that would step out in that instance, but that feels harsh after watching what we just saw in this game. Do you have any thoughts on that, Martin?
Yeah, there's one thing I just wanted to mention just about the, what I was talking about before about the midfielders helping in wide areas. It could actually work having Gnonto in a 3-4-3, even from the start. If you think about it, what we're wanting because he could still play as a midfielder out of possession. He can still operate in the same sort of spaces where I guess it would be Tanaka would have been in this situation, or Stach. And because Gnonto's used to defending in wide areas because he's a winger. So when he is in the out possession structure, he is used to defending in those areas. So that could well work. He's most likely going to be the one who's offering support to stop overlapping fullbacks or wing backs getting forward to help in the attack, or give extra support to a tricky 1v1 winger. So it could even work, although we would technically have one less midfielder. There's no reason why you can't have him still operating in that same role, even if in possession he is operating more as a attacking midfielder. You can still work it. So out of possession, he is more of a central midfielder than more attacking. He's just doing different things. You just have to prepare him for that. And he did show early in the season that he can do very well at defending at this level. And he put up some very good defensive numbers, if I recall correctly. And at one point, he was our best attacker at defending, at least in terms of the numbers that he was putting up with tackles and interceptions. So it could be something which could work. Maybe not against the better sides of the league, but certainly against at home, against a team who we feel that we can beat. It could be a good option to give us an extra body in the advanced areas while still keeping the back three solidity.
I know it's a bit of a wanky term, but like, it's not wrong to say he's one of our more technical players and one of our better technicians. I know people don't always love people talking about it because like, what does it mean? But like, he is better with kind of knitting things together, having more combinations with others and building those relationships. We saw with Tanaka and Bogle in particular, like some of their combination play can be really top when it's done right on the right side. So that's why I would like to see it. And we can experiment a bit more with midfield and attack because let's be real, like since the switch to a 5 and the way we've been playing a bit more recently, the biggest beneficiaries, despite the fact that we've conceded in every game, has still been the back 5. It has to have been. Like the 3 centre backs have looked way more comfortable. The wing backs, we know they can get forward. They like to get forward. Bogle's played a lot as a wing back in his career. Gudmundsson was a wing converted into a wing back or full back in his career. So like they both like to get forward. So yeah, they've been the main beneficiaries. But it means you can just wiggle things around and you can experiment a bit. And Farke kind of has done that to his credit a little bit in the sense that, you know, the team's felt a bit settled. Like subs have definitely changed shape or changed how we've done things a little bit. So, yeah, there's that as well. Sid Cross then asked about Gnonto, the last thing on Gnonto, and it's probably more a thing better suited to January pods, but he just said it's quite a funny one with him. He's a great player to have, but his sale likely funds 2-3 new attacking upgrades in terms of PSR. You get a winger, an attacking midfielder, a striker, those kind of things, is what he named. And he said, what will the club and Farke decide to do? Don't know. Sorry, Andrew. My gut says probably keep Gnonto. I don't see him going anywhere. I think he'll be a part of the squad. He's also quite versatile for the reasons we just discussed. You can play him in quite a few different roles in systems. We haven't even seen him as a number 10 all that much, but we know that he has like a lot of the tools in his toolkit and a lot of the skill set to do that for sure. Can play as a striker, can play as a winger, do both sides of the wings. Like I think they'll keep him. And he's not played a lot this season, so is his stock going to be at its highest where A, there's interest and B, there's interest at the kind of price that we'd be willing to sell at? And not sure. He's still got a pretty healthy contract behind him because he signed a new deal last season. So I get your point, but I just don't think it'll be Gnonto. I think it's more likely to be someone like, we've already mentioned him today as well, Piru, because he is out of favour. We needed a goal in this game and he wasn't turned to. We equalised. We could still have brought him on for an extra attacking option. We decided to not do that. You know, since the Farke realised Calvert-Lewin and Mecha are way better options suited to the Premier League, he has been completely out of it, really. Like he's played a few minutes here and there off the bench, but he's not started for ages. And the few minutes he's got have been very minimal. And some games he's just not come off at all. So he feels like an obvious sale to me. He's in the last 18 months of his contract. So he might well be one that we look at in January, and maybe there's some interest from either the Championship or abroad, and he goes, yeah, I'm actually not playing, I want to go. Could be that. Could be someone else, or we just don't sell anyone at all. We do have a big enough squad to sell players, but there are quite a few that I'm just like, which you can't afford to lose certain players in certain positions. Like some would like to sell Gruev, I'm sure. Is Gruev going to go when we have such a limited amount of midfielders and with Longstaff only just going to be recovering by the time we get to January from his injury? I'm not sure. I think they'll end up keeping until the summer because it makes sense unless they get an offer they can't refuse. It's that kind of thing. Like there are some positions where we're maybe a bit more stocked so we can sell players, but others I'm just like not sure. If we're more of a 3-5-2 team, we can sell a winger. But as I've said, just the last point here, Gnonto is so versatile. I don't think they'll want to lose him because he can fill in so many positions and roles in 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, which are the 4 formations we're probably most likely to use now. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Do you want to answer this quick one, mine, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't think Gnonto would be the guy to leave unless we got a silly offer, and unless we got an offer we were really happy with, then I think he stays. And an offer that we'd be happy with, I think, would be around the 20 million mark. I can't see us selling him for less than that, but I just don't see where that offer would come from at the moment. I think if an offer came in, because he's not really favoured by Farke, I think that's fair to say. He's not someone who's ever really looked to be one of Farke's go-to guys who he always wants to play whenever they're available. That's not ever been Willie, even though it maybe should have been at some points, especially across the Championship times. But
if people didn't know, by the way, he has played a lot of games since Farke came in, but he's not played a lot of minutes.
Yeah,
he's often subbed off or subbed on. He doesn't stay on the pitch for 90 minutes very often.
Yeah, he has played a lot of games, but yeah, like you say, he often is the first player to be taken off when there is the possibility, and Aronson was usually left on for the full 90, even when he wasn't effective and not getting a goal or an assist for what I think it was about 12, 13 games at one point that he didn't notch one at Championship level. But anyway, that's a different story. I do think that the players who were more likely to entertain offers for would definitely be Joel Peru. I think if any offer came in for Jack Harrison, we take it, but no one's going to offer any money for Jack with the amount of money that he's on. He wouldn't want to leave unless he was guaranteed the same sort of wage, and no one is going to offer him the sort of wage that he's currently on with us now.
Can you hear that? I can hear Andrew shouting at us right now through his laptop. He's saying, recall Jack. Jack? His name's not Jack. It's Joe Gelhardt, and sell him. That's what he's saying right now.
Yep, that is also an option. However, isn't he currently injured?
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, so that does not help that with that. But yeah, I do think the guys who are most likely to be sold is Joel Peru. He won't be happy that he's not playing after being the go-to guy for the time in the Championship. So he'll want to play football, and he should have some interest. Potentially someone in his home country, in the Netherlands, that could be a good option for him. I think he'd work well in Italy. If Jamie Vardy at his advanced age can do as well as he's doing over in Italy, I think Joel Peru would be able to do the same as well. Maybe even the Championship club who's wanting to guarantee them some goals. Let's face it, at the Championship level, Joel Peru does guarantee goals, even if he's in the system which doesn't really work for him. He guarantees goals at that level. So is surefire promotion help. So yeah, he'd be the guy I'd look at rather than Gnonto, Andrew.
Yep, and last thing from me on that is that where's the market for Gnonto? Who is a guy who's got 2 goal involvements in the current season. It's not particularly his fault for an injury, and then obviously other players playing, but he's only got 2 goal involvements. One was at the weekend, the other one was in the Cup against Sheffield Wednesday, unless you want to count the penalty award that he got for the Liverpool game as a third one. Oh, wow, okay, 3 goal involvements then, if you're going to really push it. No one's paying for that. At this moment in time, there's not going to be a market there for him, in my opinion, anyway. So, I'm not going to ask that one. I'm going to skip that. We're going to go towards the end now. Anyone in this game you felt struggled, Martin, quickly, from Leeds' perspective, or was it actually quite comforting across the board? I have one player in mind. I wonder if it's the same for you.
I do think it's probably the same player. I can't think anyone else other than the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah, well, I think most of the players did well in this game. He did. I don't think there's anyone who really had a massive stinker. But for me, the one guy who maybe could have done a bit better with his distribution was the goalkeeper Perry. I think that his distribution at times wasn't the best, but there is some nuance in that as well in this one. I think that he was being forced to go a particular direction, especially in the first half. This was something which Hosty picked up on, so I was paying attention to it. And Thiago was always curving his runs to force Perry to go to the left side, which was where Okafor was, rather than the right where Calvert-Lewin usually was, which meant that more often than not, it wasn't a great thing, and he was being pressed well every time that he had the ball, so he's been forced, I think, onto his weaker foot. I want to say, or is he left or right-footed, Perry? I can never remember. Right-footed, yeah. So he was being forced onto his left foot, which isn't his favoured foot. He's not the best at kicking with his right foot, so he's not going to be better with his left foot. So yeah, he was definitely being forced to use his left foot more often. So I think that does say why he wasn't that great in this game in particular, especially in the first half. It was not great, was his distribution, but there was a reason for it. But outside of that, Strauch made one poor pass that I can recall, but outside of that, he was excellent, especially defensively.
No, mate, no. He got done for pace down the wing, and you have to like completely vilify him for that, despite the fact that it wasn't really his man, and you knew he wasn't going to get there because he was against bloody Watara. It just felt really harsh for people going in on him on that. There was a lot of
I get that. I get that. Yeah,
he's not his game. He's not going to get there. I'm not saying you can't just be like make an excuse for every player and say, "Oh, it's not his game." Like, fair enough, but I don't know. It felt really harsh going in on him like that. He actually made an effort to get there. He's just not quite got the legs, which is not a surprise against the winger he was up against, who's one of the quickest in the whole league. But honestly, that was it.
He also at one point handled him really, really well.
Mm.
There was that one moment, like you mentioned, where he was done for pace, but there's another moment where he found himself 1v1 with Watara and just handled his business. Watara didn't get past him. He just said, "No, mate, you're not getting further than me."
No, we don't have to think about the negatives with Strouk. That's how the fan base works.
No, there's always nuance in these sort of things, and people see one bad pass.
He was honestly really immense. I'm not going to say he was my man of the match, but he was really good here. And then like one bad pass that people remember, and then one moment where he's done for speed. It's like that's it. Like if you're sitting there going, Strouk had a bad game.
I'm going to read some numbers to you now,
because like he as well, like his distribution was criticised, but most of the passes that went awry were the ones that he had to go longer with, and they're going to sometimes. Like when you're doing that, you pass. There's almost no point looking at pass accuracy for players that have to do that. But his short stuff was fine. Mid-range stuff was fine. Like, and then he was a really solid player on the day in terms of his defensive stuff because every single one of the centre backs at times had to handle Thiago and handled him well. So, bit of Strout defending from All Stats Aren't We as ever. But go on, Martin.
There's more. So some defensive numbers here for you. Care to guess who had the most ball recoveries in this game, Adam?
I'm going to say that it was Pascal Strouk because you've already hinted at it.
Yes, he had the most ball recoveries in this game. Care to guess who had the most combined tackles and interceptions in this game?
Was it Lucas Perry?
Yes, it was. No, it was Pascal Strouk. Care to guess who had the most clearances in this game?
Willy Gnonto.
Definitely, it was Willy Gnonto, that short man. It was again Pascal Strouk with 14 clearances in this game. The closest to him was Joe Rodon with 9. So he had a good 5 more clearances than Joseph Rodon.
And this is what we say when I said weeks ago on this pod, like too many fans will focus on one moment in the game where a player did something wrong and will say that they had a bad game. They will say that they didn't play well. And instead it should be, what did they actually do well, which you didn't really notice because it was just the ordinary stuff. And if you're marking them down slightly for that one bad thing, that's fine. But be fair. Be fair with your analysis. And like mine's just pointed out, Strouk had a really good game by eye test outside of those 2 moments and by numbers outside of those 2 moments. So, yeah, certainly one of the candidates for man of the match, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Exactly. And the final one was that he also had the joint most tackles won against dribblers. He won 2 out of his 3 tackles against dribblers, which was that one where he lost against Watara, where he was done for pace. But the other 2 times he stopped his dribblers fine. So yeah, he by the numbers, he was superb in this game. And that's before I even get into the on the ball stuff. But I'll leave it there for now. You get the point.
Right, yeah, cool. In terms of other players that struggled, the only one that I had on my mind other than Perry that with his kicking was, I think Tanaka struggled a little bit. Like, it just wasn't quite at his best. Some things were just a bit sloppy. There's not anything else to say on that. Other than that, he's probably the weakest of the outfield players. But the bar was set reasonably high in this game. I think most players were at least pretty good, at least pretty decent. So I'm not going to blame him too much. So let's talk about man of the match then, and I'm sure you're going to probably give me some Strout numbers because he's certainly one of the candidates. I'm going to put mine forward, which I think, obviously the last kind of bit of the game, which I mentioned earlier in the pod, where he messed up a couple of attacks when he got a nosebleed too high up the pitch. Anton Stack, I honestly felt like he was so dominant in both halves in terms of his ball winning, whether that was a bit deeper or a bit higher up the pitch. And, you know, he was a bit more decisive than usual when he had to put balls towards the box as well. So I was really, really happy with him and his intensity in the game. If he faded a bit at the end, maybe it was just a bit of tired legs, or maybe it was, he just doesn't like being in those forward areas too much unless he doesn't have to think too hard and he can just shoot, which seems to be better for him. So he was one of mine. Ampadu in the second half was also monstrous, like such a good ball winner. And then Was pretty happy to carry it a few times into dangerous areas. Really, really good performance from him. The 3 centre backs, each of them deserve a shout out. Probably in particular Strauch, and obviously that feels a bit all stats aren't we, because we do love him, but he was great for all the reasons you said. So I'm between Stack, Ampadu, and Strauch, and I probably lean to Stack personally, but I can see arguments for those other two. You might say another player who I've not even thought about. Like Okafor had a pretty strong first half, even though I didn't see the ball much. He was dangerous. He's our most dangerous player comfortably, but wasn't quite as effective in the second, for example. So a few players there. You tell me yours.
So yeah, all the players you mentioned there, all were in my thinking, as well as Jaden Bogle and Goodmanson. They were both in my thinking as well. They both had strong games. Numbers wise, they were also strong. But I'm giving it to the same guy as you, Anton Sack. He was superb in this one. Combined really nicely wherever he went on the pitch, and some really intelligent movements at times as well. There was one moment where he carried the ball from the left all the way over to the right, passed the ball over to Bogle when he was like just inside the half space, indicated where he was going to make a run into the box, made that run, and then unfortunately the resulting cross was blocked off at the source. But it was just some lovely movements and just combining them down. That's what you need from your central midfielders in this sort of system. You need them to get into the box and to try to create things as well. And he was doing that. He was trying to make things happen. So I think actually his in possession game impressed me more than his out of possession game in this one. Not like his out of possession game was bad, but like I said, I wasn't happy with him on the goal. So that was the one moment which he could have done better. But outside of that, he was excellent in this, and he's doing a really good job. And he's just impressing me the more that I see him.
Yep.
And he's taken to English football like a duck to water. Is the gorgeous, massive German bastard.
I mostly agree with that. I think obviously we had the slight dip, and that was just before he did his ribs. And then when he came back from his ribs being all battered, he still wasn't quite at his best. But I think now we've seen 3 games in a row where you can definitely say you've seen the guy that we signed from Hoffenheim, the guy that I was really excited about, the reason why I wanted him so much is some of the reason why over the summer pods I was saying he should be considered one of our best players straight away. And I think we're seeing it now more often, more consistently. It just, for me, it felt like he was everywhere in the game, in all phases, defensively, offensively. Whether you liked that or not, I like that from my midfielder. It felt he was dominant against bums like Jordan Henderson. And also, I bloody hate Jordan Henderson. I think he's an overrated player. He's all right, but he's overrated, and I don't like him because he played a really nice pass in this match out to the left, and I just distinctly remember getting really pissed at him during England against Croatia in 2018 when I myself was pissed, and he couldn't play a pass to save his life. So why are you suddenly able to do it in a Brentford shirt, you dick? Anyway, that's enough of that. The last thing I wanted to say was, I'm not saying Leeds fans are wrong, but I do find it interesting that Calvert-Lewin won man of the match on the online vote. It does show how much goals dictate the average football mind. It wasn't a huge percentage. I think he got like 30-something%. So it wasn't a huge one. But for me, Stack was the most dominant, and I'm glad you agreed. And I know he made a little bit of an error on their goal, and I know he gave the ball away a bit sloppily in the final third on a couple of occasions later on. But honestly, this is the guy we bought for the most part, and that we're seeing more consistently now. So he's our most expensive signing in the summer too, and people need to remember that. You expect this kind of level from him, but we're seeing it way more now. And like you say, it's almost like he's taken to the league like a duck to water when we're seeing him like this. I think that's it. Anything else you want to close on, or can I just finish?
Just wanted to just say that Thiago got absolutely munched. That's just what I wanted to say. He had 0 shots. 0 shots.
The second top scorer in the league.
Zero expected assists. 0 pretty much everything. He was absolutely bodied by Pascal Strauch et al.
Yeah, et al.
And yeah,
I think it was probably,
I
haven't checked this, but it felt like BL and Strout the most, Rodon the least. That's not a criticism of Rodon, but it just felt like BL and Strout were all over him all game. So
yeah, they handed him off to each other quite frequently, and I think that's why he was so ineffective in this one. We just did not give him a moment's peace. He will have had trouble sleeping that night.
For balance, Steph mentioned that he was essentially 1 versus 3 with no one supporting him because the midfielders are all quite defensive minded, and then
I don't care.
Only one of the wingers was actually getting close to him in Ouattara. So yeah, I don't really care about all that stuff. So screw you, Steph. I love you. Patreon.com/ASAW Patreon is where you can find our bonus content. Probably won't have tons going out right now, but maybe very soon in January. We'll definitely have to react to some things. I'm certain the club will sign at least one player that we'll have to write about or talk about or both. So that keep a lookout for that, and most of that stuff will be on Patreon. Don't forget again to like and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us out. Really important one to say is we do donate every single bit, well, not every single bit, but a big chunk of what we get on Patreon to Leeds North and West Foodbank.org.uk. And it's this time of year, it's freezing cold, and people are lonely and depressed. It's not always a happy time for everyone, Christmas. So if you can donate yourselves and you don't want to subscribe to the Patreon, please do donate. Leeds again, northandwest.foodbank.org.uk. It'd be massive. They would really appreciate it, and there will be hungry people to feed this Christmas, that's for sure. But anyway, on a lighter note, that's all we have time for tonight. We'll be back very soon to preview the Palace game at the weekend, which should be tomorrow. They only have a 2-day turnaround. That's wonderful, isn't it, to think about? And then I'm not sure what Christmas will look like, but we will address that. Probably I'll make Martin do a tweet about it if we have to, just to let people know what we're not doing, what we are doing, and what's going to be combined. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you as well, Adam.
Thank you, dear listeners. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you very soon. Hopefully we beat Palace as well. That'd be great. Bye.